In today's video, we're going to be going over the European, Canadian, and GFS models individually. We're going to be comparing the snowfall last season to this season, and we're also going to be taking a look at those temperature anomalies, just like we've been doing every single video now for a couple of videos in a row. Let's take a look at this European model real quickly, and I just want to kind of have you pay attention to something. We do have plenty of storminess taking place multiple times, probably 3 or 4 times across the next 10 days across this region here on the European model. And then equally, the Canadian model during the same range might have about one storm impact those areas. So very big differences coming in from the models today. We see this storm that we have in the southeast here is going to kind of slide down. So it kind of gets suppressed by this major trough that you can see here, which is basically moving in right now. And that is just going to force this out and bring very cold air in place. As you can see, it's going to be extremely cold this afternoon across most of the Northeast and Upper Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, that area, Mid-Atlantic as well. But tomorrow, it's also going to be very cold, especially kind of in your eastern corridor here right in this area. It's going to be much colder actually Saturday than it was Friday. But after this point, it's going to go ahead and lift off a little bit. And we see a major trough kind of moving into the west as there's a little bit more of a suppressed one now in the east. And then we have this more major trough moving in with a storm system as well. As you can see, heavy snowfall for the Sierra Nevadas into the Cascades as well. And then pretty much high and dry out east. I mean, there's some snow showers for Canada, a little bit of some isolated thunderstorms or spread around showers down there for the Gulf, but really very quiet in the east. We see this nor'easter offshore, fish storm, total fish storm. So we see this basically do this and then this, and it won't be able to impact the East Coast very much at all. As we continue things on, we see this more major trough continuing to basically impact the west here and more of a ridge look here in the east. And what we see is also a low developing in between here, which could feature a cold front, warm front, which again, like I've mentioned before, would feature a warm sector and therefore potentially severe weather. That's Tuesday the 7th. As we just continue this on, I want to watch this develop, but this is by the time we're reaching Thursday the 9th here. We see this low over northern Illinois. Cold front swinging down all the way, I mean, through the Gulf probably, but definitely for the kind of, I would say, deeper south areas, the southeast, we're seeing this. Also, warm front here. We see this warm sector taking place across all of these areas. You can literally see these little showers moving in with the humid, warm air. That would be the look here. And then we would be watching for severe weather as they're swinging cold air behind. So the cold air hitting the warm air that's moving up like this is never good. That is never, never good. That is what causes shear. And what you look for is you have this warm air rising up here, the cold air hitting it from the side. This is what can cause basically swirling up in the sky. I'm going to try to draw an illustration here that kind of makes sense. Hopefully that's like 3D enough, but that's from the wind heading north from the side here with the cold front causes these rotations, these horizontal rotations up in the atmosphere. And then basically all you need is a down draft here. You need some sort of microburst or downdraft to push that rotating vortice downward, and that was what would cause tornadic activity. But anytime you get this side wind hitting the northern wind here, it's not good. Because again, it causes the horizontal rotation, which it only takes a little bit of a microburst to push that basically down and cause tornadoes. That is how it starts. That's not to say that this would be a major tornado day, or even not to say it would be a minor tornado day. It's a little bit far out, so we can't really say. What I can say is that Friday into Saturday as well would be another day to look out for here on the kind of southeast mid-Atlantic coast. We'd be watching for that as there's still very warm air in the area as we have the swinging cold front dynamic and the warm front here. Still a very strong warm layer there. Very interesting for February, continuing kind of how January left off. So we see that storm actually move out. And then what we get is this little bit of a trailing nor'easter that wants to kind of move in right behind it, as you can see. And this moves offshore of kind of the mid-Atlantic. And again, this would cause some windiness, some storminess, because we're going to see rotation in this direction from a nor'easter. So you'd probably see a strong wind down the east coast here, plus pretty intense storminess and waves. You'd have multiple impacts from a storm like that along the east coast. But not only that, we do see some snowfall here for a lot of the northeast, as we have a 993 millibar low pressure center offshore, but it's far enough offshore to where this would be more of a minor to moderate snowstorm, nothing really major. As you can see, right around the 12th, 13th time frame, we do have a more major trough moving back in, so we would feature colder air towards the middle point of the month again. We're kind of seeing a double dip trough here, as it looks like this, more of a ridge in the middle here, and then we have these troughs kind of in the west and the east taking place. So it would probably be a story of which one's more dominant here. So it'd be between the west and the east one, and that would dictate where we go from here if this took place exactly like this is showing. Now here's the total precipitation through the next 10 days. As you can see again, you can tell a lot of this activity is kind of doing this here. Can't see that maybe, but doing this for the most part, and it's moving through the Gulf and then offshore of the East Coast. And then a lot of that activity is actually in this area here. We do see that there's plenty of storms that are probably going to move on to the northwest as well, as we have high amounts of precipitation for the northwest also. And then a lot more dry out here for the plains and the Rockies. It's kind of the expectation at this point. So there's going to be a bubble of lower amounts out here. Now, total snowfall here, kind of as expected, a little bit quieter in the east is what we've been seeing for the entire winter, and it's what we expect to continue to see through the next 10 days. However, there is actually quite a bit expected out west for the Cascades, the Sierra Nevadas, and the Rockies still. Um, that is kind of what we expect at this point through the next 10 days. Now, the GFS model here, somehow, and I say somehow because this is just kind of mind blowing. We get this same kind of setup here with this low cold front, surging warm air, warm front here. So you see the same setup again, which would again cause major implicacies with severe weather potentially. But we get a major snowstorm on the northern end of this somehow on the GFS model, and we don't see it at all on the European model for Saturday, right around the 11th. So you have a low here just south of Long Island, premium's position here actually for a snowstorm, by the way, for New England. So you see this setup, and it's probably just going to continue to get colder here on this end, a little bit warmer here on this end, as that low is located right here. So we'll see if that's what plays out. Yeah, so we see a little bit of a rising in the mixing here, but we see the snowfall getting a little bit further south there in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. This would be a pretty major snowstorm. So we see that take place. We get another storm moving through here, just like that. I want to take a look quickly at the total snowfall. Yeah, so this would be an easily 10 to 15-inch event here for a lot of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, especially. But it's the GFS model, so we take it with a grain of salt. I mean, that's just how it is, especially when it has its own idea and all the other models don't have the same idea. That is a bit of a red flag. We do see another system here, which is the same thing the European model showed, except it's just significantly colder here on this GFS model. We see snowfall for North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, DC. Definitely would be a very different solution than we've seen for most of the winter. Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, seeing snowfall again, New Hampshire and Vermont also, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So we get this northeast snowstorm too. It moves through just like this. Uh, Pretty perfect storm track again here from the GFS model. And this would just cause a lot of snowfall. Then we get kind of this gradient snowstorm. You never want to see these. These don't really cause, for cold and snow lovers, you might see flakes, but it just would never be able to really cause accumulations. We see a low primarily on the southern end of things, but we also see a strong low up here. So there's broad low pressure kind of up and down the east. And what's happening here is on the western end of things, it's snowfall, as you can see. On the eastern end of things, it is rainfall. That is the look here. So everywhere would pretty much start as rainfall, end as snow, and you can't really get accumulation that way. I will say it becomes a 978 millibar low pressure center here, which is a significant low pressure system here for the Northeast. And I would say this would probably cause some pretty major impacts there for the Northeast if that did take place. And then we follow this up with a very cold look in the east here. I mean, this is significant uh, cold air moving through the north central United States into the northeast and the mid Atlantic and the Ohio Valley here. So we're seeing significant cold air moving into a lot of these areas right around the end of the model run here, which would be pretty much between the 15th and the 20th of February. So uh, take it with a grain of salt. That's all I'll say. So we're seeing that on this model, but am I buying it? That's a good question. Now the Canadian model, again, somehow it's the same time frame as the European model here, but we see just definitely way less activity. So we get this first storm moving out, just like all three models show, and then we get pretty much nothing developing. The 8th, we have this storm here. It's rising up much quicker though, and we have this cold front, so we have the same features, and you can tell there's a warm front somewhere in there. You have the same features, probably the rising warm air here, the swinging cold air. This would be more significant actually for severe weather, in my opinion. Um, but it doesn't really spread eastward like the European model shows, and we see it basically break apart and then just develop into the same nor'easter look, but it's much weaker. So we get like a tiny bit of activity there in the east, and that's it. So I mean, if we look at the total precipitation here, yeah, kinda as I suspected, it's like a lot less reds in a lot of the eastern United States. When we compare that to, this right here, you can tell that that's a whole lot more precipitation here than what the Canadian model is showing, um, or what the European model is showing. Um, this is just really high and dry compared to the European model, in my opinion. Now, the temperature anomalies here. We get cold, obviously, like I said, for this afternoon. As you can see, this huge Arctic blast here over the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, even some of the deeper South down here, seeing some of this significantly cold air. This is definitely probably easily the coldest air we've seen all year so far, and the second coldest of the season, kind of just trailing behind that Christmas Eve event, which was significantly colder than this. Um, and we see that again, Saturday is going to be a lot colder for the eastern seaboard here. Um, and then we basically move into a warmer pattern. For the foreseeable future, there is some cold air that trends in right around the 10th through the 14th time frame. That sticks around for a tiny bit. By the 15th, we return back to this kind of trough in the west, ridge in the east pattern. Um, and that doesn't look to break anytime soon, although we do see that there is more cold air influencing the east by the time we're reaching about the 18th through the 20th time frame. So we'll continue to watch that, but it seems like that's finally wanting to kind of spread some more cold further east here, and that could trend towards showing it here eventually. Only time will be able to tell. Now, here is the total snowfall in last winter, the total through the winter. I can maybe get it to more uh to date. Let's see. Can I do that? Let's see. No, I can only get it basically through the total of the entire winter of last winter, 2021 to 2022. But you can see all these areas here have snowfall. So let me just point that out. Uh, and then this winter, all these areas don't have snowfall. So I think that is the major difference. We're going to draw the line of where there's accumulating snowfall and where there's not. So it's about like that. So everywhere south of that line clearly has maybe seen flakes, maybe a dusting, uh, but practically no snowfall. Even Long Island and New York City, which is pretty far north. And this is last winter. So you could see significant snowfall for a lot of Tennessee, the Smoky Mountains, Virginia, Maryland, DC, Delaware, even down through Southeast Virginia, Northeast North Carolina, up through into New Jersey, Southeast Pennsylvania, New York City, Long Island. All of these areas have 10 to 15, even 20 plus inches of snowfall for a lot of these areas. Certainly a far stretch from, again, what we've seen this winter. And if things don't turn around soon, this is how we will close things out too, which is, concerning to think about. Um, I mean, it's interesting to note, I'm going to draw another line here, that this is where we would draw the line for last winter. Look at how far south that is, midway through um, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. The northern ends of those states all saw snowfall last winter. Imagine that this winter. I mean, these areas have not seen anything. North Carolina, actually, out of all these states, seems to be in the biggest snow drought, honestly, because only the very, very, very mountainous areas have seen snowfall. And basically, a vast majority of the state has not even seen a flake, which is crazy to think about. Just some food for thought. I wanted to show you guys where we're actually at because I know it feels like there hasn't been much snow, but when we look at it on paper here, it's just mind blowing, in my opinion. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. Didn't mean to close things out on a Debbie Downer there. Be sure to subscribe as we do upload every single day. And we will kind of just journey through the end of the winter here into the beginning of the spring together. I do think that there is hope for some last minute snowfall in a lot of these areas, obviously, but only time will be able to truly tell. So be sure to tune in daily as we will get to the bottom of all of it. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Also, like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.